This week on Writers Inc.
Once you get used to being prolific, of course, it gets easier because anything can be trained, as a habit. At first, I was very stressed because I'd never had deadlines before and I had a large family. So I had to be very careful not to get behind because I'm the type of person that freezes up if I'm under too much pressure, rather than like some people need that. Like they'll put it off till the end and then they'll just race and pour it all out. And I am not like that. Like I have to know that I can make it, and I measure each. And so I just made small goals. If I get my small goal done every day, I will hit my big goal.
J.K. Rowling was nearly homeless when she wrote the first Harry Potter book. Stephen King penned Carrie in a small desk wedged between a washer and dryer. James Patterson worked in advertising and famously crafted the Toys R Us theme song long before becoming an author. Join New York Times bestseller J.D. Barker and a panel of industry powerhouses as they pull back the curtain on some of the world's most prolific authors. Where did they start? What is their process? The biggest names in publishing all have origin stories. All have tips and secrets. What does it take to consistently top the bestseller lists and become a household name? Get your notepad out. School's in session. This is Writers Inc.
Hi, it's Christine Daigle.
Patrick O'Donnell.
JP Reinflush.
Kevin Tumlinson.
And this is JD Barker. Welcome to Writers Inc. So I've got an announcement to make. I changed agents this week.
I'm shocked to hear this.
I'm shocked.
I was too, to be honest with you. No, here's the thing. So, when I first found Kristen,
JD? Is that what happened?
No, it was a mutual breakup.
That's what they all say.
So
it's complicated. Is that your Facebook thing?
It actually isn't. So, with Kristen, like our whole relationship kind of came about very weird. So I sent out query letters for Fourth Monkey. I queried 53 agents. I got 13 or 14 agents that wanted the book. Kristen was one of the first ones that I had went to because she represented Josh Mallerman and a couple of other friends of mine, and she read it and she loved the book, but she got back to me like Wednesday or something. And she said, I can't rep it because I don't do thriller authors. So I started talking to all these other ones, and I actually confirmed, basically signed on with another agent that read the book like over the weekend. I basically talked to her on a Friday. She read the book over the weekend. Sunday night, I talked to her again, and we basically firmed things up. And like literally within hours of that phone call, I got another call from Kristen, and she said, "You know what? I can't pass on this book. I need to do it. If you still want to work with me, let's make this happen." So I signed with Kristen, and she's been phenomenal. I've got zero complaints about anything she did. The thing was, I've always been her only thriller author. And, that to a certain, it's, I guess, like a glass ceiling in a lot of ways. Like she's got the contacts for certain things, but, we basically kind of hit a wall as far as, where she could take me. So I put the word out, I guess about a month and a half, 2 months ago. It's a very different environment for me now because I'm basically talking to agents that I've known for years. I'm not like blind querying people. I'm walking in with spreadsheets. I've got sales numbers behind me. I've got the new book ready to go. I've got film deals, TV deals, all that kind of stuff going on. So it's really just a matter of finding somebody, from a personality standpoint, that's a good fit and basically has the pieces in place to take me to the next level. So I narrowed it down to 4. And then a couple of days ago, I made the final cut, and I went with a guy named Alex Shane, who was with Writers House out of New York. So a lot of you may know Alec because he actually represents a lot of the organizations. So if you're a member of the HWA, he actually handles the anthologies for HWA and a few of the other ones. Very active on social media. And he's one of these guys, like I've known him for years and years. Whenever I go to New York, whether it's business or just something fun, we always, we get together and we grab lunch or grab dinner or something, just kind of shoot the shit. But like we've always gotten along. So, Writers House is a fantastic agency. They've got, a huge foreign department. They've got a huge film and TV department. And more importantly, they're willing to play nice with the people that I've already got in place. I've already got a film and TV agent that I love working with. And, we had a couple calls with those people talking to, the Writers House people, basically working out how they're going to pursue film and TV on the new projects together, because I don't want anybody getting closed out. This guy's been doing phenomenal for me. So I don't want to sever ties there, but we got everything all worked out, and they're going out with my new book this week. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, that is big news. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's exciting. It's, and, like I said, Kristen and I, she's almost like a sister to me at this point. Like we everything is, it was a mutual decision. We both knew it was the right thing to do. We're still in contact. She's talking to the new agent, so they're working together too. It was, in a lot of ways, I think it was a relief, because it was almost like breaking up with somebody I didn't want to break up with, but I kind of knew I had to. So we'll see where it goes.
If you don't mind me asking, did you have to sever some type of contract, or how does that work?
Yeah, and that's where it gets tricky. So the contract itself, I just had to give Kristen 30 days written notice. So that's not a big deal. Where it gets confusing is they're already, like there's constant negotiations going on for my books, particularly on the foreign side. There's a ton of markets out there, and, they're still selling Fourth Monkey in new territories. So like when we had this conversation, we basically had to reach out to the people doing that. And, they created a list, like we're close on these particular countries. This one doesn't look likely, like that kind of thing. Because, obviously they've done years worth of work, and I don't want to pull the rug out from underneath them too. So we had to kind of go through everything that was in the works, put a cutoff date on each item. And then move forward from there. And she's still the agent of record for the books that she sold. So Dracul, the 4MK series, things like that. She's still going to be a part of my life from that standpoint. It's not like you just pick up all your books and head off to somebody else. So in some ways it kind of creates a little extra confusion because now I've got 1099s coming from multiple agents, but that's been going on for years anyway. So so they all have to kind of play nice together. But Kristen's been phenomenal, as far as handling it. She's been great in the past. I've got no worries about that moving forward. I think it's just, this is the right thing to do. It's the right time to do it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's, I imagine, because I've only had an agent a couple of times in my career, but that's one of those things that, no one thinks about. It's like, there's just like any relationship, there's going to come a point where you realize we're not helping each other, and you might have to split up.
Well, honestly, it spurs a lot of conversations too, just along, like the current publishing environment. Talking to a new agent, one of the questions is, well, which, because I'm a free agent at this point, like my new book, I can sell to anybody that I want. I'm not committed to anybody on this title. So he wanted to know which publisher I would want it to go to. And that's a very tough question because I kind of look at the business side of it. And a lot of the existing publishers out there are still kind of doing 20th century techniques to try and push books, where other ones aren't. So honestly, like right now, I'm leaning towards like Thomas and Mercer and those types of publishers, just because the tools they have available to them. Somebody like Thomas and Mercer, has those Amazon algorithms behind them. If you look at any of the Amazon bestseller lists, it's all, Amazon imprint, authors at the very top of each of those lists. That's no accident. If I were to go with, one of the other, top publishers, they can't guarantee that. And I don't need the money at this point. For me, it's, I'm going to sign with whoever's going to give me the biggest amount of exposure, who's going to get me in front of people that don't know who I am yet, and basically increase my overall, umbrella of sales. So this is going to be a very interesting, book to take out. I'm really curious to see where it lands, and, hopefully we're going to be able to do something new.
Yeah. That's really exciting. I'm curious to see what happens with it too. So keep us posted. And this is the one that Kevin and I read that's going out.
This is the one that you guys read.
Fantastic. Yeah. I wish you the best of luck. I hope it goes huge.
All right. Well, JP, what's in the news?
All right. First one is an article from Vox about book talk. So the hashtag book talk in TikTok has caused a huge surge in book sales, particularly among the young adult genre. This was back in 2021. Book talk specifically was responsible for doubling the sales of featured authors. And it's something that continues today, even being something that increases sales by 43% so far in 2023. So currently, Book Talk appears to be the most profitable publishing trend of the year. And the influencers that are in TikTok, while some of them are reluctant to make sort of a monetization of their content, others have, and they've reported of being paid about $2,000 per video, which is pretty astonishing. And really, the big thing about Book Talk, and I think that the big drive with Book Talk, is that it comes from ordinary people. And there's sort of that like viral trend of just like everyday people kind of talking about their experience with the book. And that's really driving people to purchase those books. So I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on this.
Well, I was reading what you sent, and I was just curious about the authenticity piece, because the question is, if you start paying people, is this an authentic book recommendation, especially when it's so huge for YA and for, I don't know, I remember being a teenager and young adult, and that's what you wanted, something that was authentic, right? Something not by the man in corporate being promoted. Yeah. And I wonder if it starts to get that kind of reputation that, oh, these are all paid for. I wonder how much influence it will continue to have.
Well, I was actually having that same thought when I saw the dollar amounts, and, think of it this way. You're paying, if you're doing ads on Facebook, you're paying Facebook to put your book in front of X number of people for X number of dollars. So if you're paying an influencer to do the same thing, you're paying them X number of dollars to put it in front of X number of people. So it's essentially the exact same thing. People have been doing this for years. You can watch The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. You could watch an old rerun. You'll see a product placement, basically a plug by the celebrity guest, during the interview with Carson. They'll mention, this particular golf club or this particular that. They're paid to do that. They're very good at sneaking it in there, but it happens all the time. I'm in a unique position here because I own Best of Book Talk. We do promotion specifically to influencers. I think our largest one right now has 800,000 followers. I would pay $2,000 for that person to record a video and put it out there in front of 800,000 people. That's a no-brainer for me. And I think rightfully so, they should charge for this. It's not a simple ask. I get people that complain a lot, on Best of Book Talk, they don't get enough reviews, or they don't like the review that they got, like that sort of thing. And they don't realize what they're actually asking. To take your book, put it in front of somebody who's never read you before, ask them to read it, ask them to record, not just record a, little review, but actually create a video, edit all that, put that content up there. That's a ton of work. And you're asking a total stranger to do that. Yeah. So I think the ones that actually do get that far, that actually get to the point of somebody making a video and somebody else, making a video about that same book because they liked it too. When you start seeing a few of those, to me, that says a lot, whether they're getting paid or not. There's that book itself is worth talking about.
Yeah. And I think what you said there is really important, because I think there's a difference between an honest review. As long as you're paying for an honest review, great. It's when you're paying for promotion is when it starts to be a problem, right? I don't think that's going to happen, because I think, in the book world, that's usually what people do. They pay for a review and it's going to be good or bad. And I think as long as Book Talk stays that way, it might be fine. It's the same thing in bookstores, right? You think about all that space is paid for. I don't know if it still is this way, because I used to do some acquisition editing for a small press. And I used to know about, you paid by quarter inch, half inch for bookshelf space, right? And that's why there's word counts. And then, the Heather's picks or whatever were paid for. The space besides the cash register was the most paid for. So if you think that stuff's not going on, it's always going on, right? For every product, and books are really no different.
Well, as I sip my Perky Beans coffee, that's Perky Beans right here in Austin, Texas, I feel like product placement makes a review inauthentic. That's Perky Beans, Austin, Texas. Tell them Kevin sent you.
But I don't think you can underestimate the power of TikTok. I know we're talking about one aspect of it, but there's authors out there that, James Blatch gave a great presentation at 20 Books last November about TikTok. And he had one TikTok. He was just at London Heathrow talking about flying. It wasn't some great production value. It wasn't, there's no dancing involved or whatever, but it sold books for him. It is a very powerful tool. It's not 100%, but it's one more thing that you could do. And the only thing that you're doing is you're using time that maybe you could be doing something else. But you know what? It's still free.
Right. And I know for me in 2021, 2022, the majority of my books were purchased from videos of reviewers on TikTok talking about certain reviews of those books. However, it was not the author talking about their book. It was always the continued reviewers talking about how much they liked the book and how much it fit in with whatever they read, which I found interesting because, I feel like there is a space for authors to promote their books, especially in the book talk world. It's really like a space for reviewers to talk about the books that they've read and promote those.
Right. But it's also people, going back to James, he wasn't talking about any of his books. You're selling yourself as the author. Okay. Here I am on a motorcycle. Here I am flying. Here I am, doing X, Y, and Z. It's exposure. People like you. And then all of a sudden you start selling more books.
Does that count as book talk? Is that really book talk?
I don't know if it counts as book talk. Here's the thing. So the reader is basically doing you, the author, a favor by buying your book. So like if you're putting out content like that, and there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, I love that, James is out there doing it and other authors are out there just creating random content. And it's the same rule that, has been around forever. You put out 5 random tweets about your cat and your dog, and then you maybe mention something about your book in there. But the readers are buying your book as a favor to you as the author because they like your other content. They respect you in some way because of what you're posting. And they're saying, oh, by the way, this guy's an author. He just mentioned his book. I'm going to go ahead and buy it. I think, what you guys had just touched on is key there. Like if I'm going to take a book recommendation from somebody and go out there and plunk my dollars for it, that recommendation is going to come from somebody who recommends books. Like their feed should be books. Yep. I'm not going to take the author's word for, I wrote the greatest book ever, go out and check it out. That doesn't resonate with me. I want somebody who's read 15, 20 books this month and decided this is the one that they want to talk about. I think that's why Best of Book Talk kind of works in a lot of ways, because those influencers that we have, that's all they do. They do nothing but talk about books. And, for every 5 or 10 that they read, they only review 1 or 2 of them. They luckily, and because there's so much production involved in creating those, they don't tend to talk about the ones they don't like. They just talk about the ones they do, which is, I think, a good thing too. Mm-hmm. But, the cream of the crop rises and, you end up hearing about it.
Yep. Next in news, copyright registration guidance on works containing material generated by AI. So U.S. Copyright Office recognizes that guidance is still needed for the registration of works containing AI-generated content. And so the office applies to human authorship requiring and evaluating works containing AI-generated material. Works lacking human authorship are not protected by copyright and must be disclaimed in registration application. In cases where works both contain human-authored and AI-generated material, only the human-authored aspects of the work are eligible for copyright protection. So this article came directly from the Federal Register. So I was curious what your guys' thoughts were on this whole decision.
First up, I want to introduce the AI drinking game. Every time we mention AI, you take
it will be every week, so be prepared.
Oh boy.
Oh man.
Don't listen back to back. You will be blackened.
So I actually had to read all of this for ITW, for International Thriller Writers, just to try and figure out what's going on. And Library of Congress and the Copyright Office, they put out a big white paper basically describing their stance on this. And the general take is if you submit something and a part of it is written by AI, they're not going to allow you a full copyright. They'll copyright the text you wrote, but not the part that the AI wrote. Right now, they seem to be working on the honor system. You have to tell them when you fill out the application. I can tell you behind the scenes, they are working with tons of software to try and figure out a way to automate this process and catch it one way or the other. I think as an author, you just have to be very careful with it right now, because a lot of organizations, a lot of companies are looking for ways to basically not allow AI content for a lot of reasons, mainly because of the way it's being taught. Nobody owns it, this and that. But if you're using AI in your books now, let's say you write a book and you use AI to help you with descriptions of buildings or whatever, and you publish that book on Amazon, you don't own 100% of that copyright because the AI wrote some of it. There's a very good chance Amazon within a year might say we can no longer promote books or allow books on our platform if the copyright isn't owned 100% by the author. And a lot of that's going to shake out through cases that are working their way up to the Supreme Court at this point. So we're a year or two away from that. So my general thinking is I'm staying away from it in the stuff that I write, simply because I don't know what's going to happen with it. I would hate to have 10 books that get published over the next couple of years, have them out there all floating around in the wild, have the Supreme Court make some kind of ruling that all of a sudden doesn't allow it. All those books have to be pulled all of a sudden. It's not worth that X factor.
100%.
There are so many problems with this, and it's going to create even more problems down the road. I mean, not the least of which is, first of all, when you create something, you automatically own the copyright. There's no registration process or anything that you must go through. You can go through, but you do not have to in order to own copyright. The problem I see with this is how much and how do you determine which parts of a book are not protected by copyright? So if I do say I had some help with this, like, do I have to disclose every word or sentence that was generated by the AI in order to protect the rest of it from being, taken advantage of in some way? I think we've just opened a can of worms, really. And honestly, I think you'd be nuts to admit to anybody that you had any AI assistance in the manuscript at this point. Just rewrite everything and go. Don't tell anybody that there was ever an AI involved. I think that's crazy.
This is not legal advice.
Nope.
This is not legal advice. It's not a legal issue anyway, because you're under no.
Right.
So there are legal issues surrounding copyright, obviously, but like if I paid someone to ghostwrite a book for me, I don't have to disclose that it was ghostwritten. And this falls under the same heading for me. I'm not going to disclose to you who assisted me in any way. I'm just going to make sure that I'm clean, that there's no plagiarism, and I'm going to run. But, I don't use AI for my stuff, so it's not going to be a problem for me, but I would be really alarmed if I was using that. I wouldn't go anywhere near this.
Well, the difference there is the Copyright Office, they actually call out human, like that's in the actual language. Like it must be created by a human in order for it to be copywritten or to pull a copyright. So like that would actually have to change, which it's probably not going to. So that's the real difference between that and like a ghostwriter just writing a memoir, which I've done tons of, work for hire or whatever. Somebody else owns it, but it's written by a person. And again, this all stems back to the training. The AIs are being trained on written words that already exist. And, the ownership of those words that they're being trained on is what creates the question. And like, it's this giant black box that just makes my head hurt.
That also is what creates a problem for me, because if it's training on all these words out there, and we've already discovered, I can't disclose all of this, unfortunately, but there was a discovery that they trained using a certain service against that service's terms of service. Okay. So they illegally used the materials to train ChatGPT. And so a lot of authors that use that service contributed to this. So if they're going to use ChatGPT to track down ChatGPT generated content, and that content is a result of having trained on these authors, isn't there a possibility that those authors may get caught up in a sort of, false positive? That's the kind of thing that really worries me.
A lot of people don't realize where the ownership actually lies. So if you read, let's say, your Facebook terms of service, anything you post on Facebook is now property of Facebook. So if you put pictures up there, you put text up there, they can do whatever they want with it. Reddit, which I think is what you're referring to, it's one of the sites that they skimmed when training the AIs, is, they own that content. If you comment on a Reddit thread, Reddit owns that content. They can sell your content. There's been tons of cases where people have caught their own Facebook posts or images in ads. There was one like 10, 15 years ago with the woman that turned up oddly in a coffee commercial for a Facebook post that her daughter had taken a picture of her, and it ended up in a coffee commercial. Facebook rightfully, had the ownership rights to be able to sell that and make that happen. They basically licensed somebody else's image out there. They're making money off of that image that this woman just posted because her daughter took a picture of her. So ownership on all this stuff is coming into question. Yeah, it's messy. I mean, it makes me want it, I'm going to write my next book with a pen and a pad of paper in the corner somewhere, no computer anywhere near me. I'm going to unplug the Amazon Alexa, so it can't hear what I'm doing, and, try and get all of it out of my life.
Yeah, but Astro
I'm just
is
disappointed I haven't been in a coffee ad now. I want to be in a coffee ad for Perky Coffee.
Well, good news, Shane, because you have contributed to my ad for Perky Beans here in Austin. That's called a callback. This episode is brought to you by MasterWriter. MasterWriter is a powerful collection of writing tools and references assembled in one easy-to-use program. Included are word families, phrases, synonyms, rhymes, definitions, figures of speech, pop culture, a searchable Bible of intensifiers, and a unique collection of intense descriptive words. Why struggle to find the right word when you can have all the possibilities in an instant? While a computer can't compete with the mind and imagination of a writer, the mind can't compete with the word choices that MasterWriter will give you in an instant. When the two work together, great things happen. Check it out today at masterwriter.com.
All right. So, JD, who's up this week?
This week, we've got Brenda Novak. She's a New York Times bestselling author and winner of the National Reader's Choice Award. She's out with her 75th novel. Wow. It's called The Seaside Library and releases April 11th. So here she is, Brenda Novak.
So you have a new book out, The Seaside Library, which is your 75th book.
Yes. Well, it's always hard to get to the right number because it depends on whether you count novellas and short stories. And so I keep going back over that page again and again to make sure I'm there. And it depends on what you count, but yes.
But still, that's quite a milestone. Can you tell us a little bit about this book?
Yeah, this book is about three friends who grew up on this island, very Nantucket-like. I actually visited Nantucket and I fell in love with it, but so many writers were writing about Nantucket that I wanted to create something in the general area that was very Nantucket-like, but where I had a little bit of artistic license to create something that was also a figment of my imagination. I could expand where I wanted to and do different things. So I created Mariners. So it's three friends who grew up on the island, and there's not a lot of people who stay year-round, even though the summer swells to, like 90,000. The year-round population's like 15. So they're very tight friends because they are some of the few locals, and they vowed to protect each other through thick and thin. And so even when Cam, the male part of the trio, is accused of when somebody goes missing, and he gets the suspicion kind of falls on him. And so they lie to give him an alibi, knowing that there's no way he could be responsible for this girl's abduction. And then 20 years later, when they're kind of building their separate lives and one has even moved away, some evidence comes to light that makes them question whether they were wise to do that, who they could trust, if they could really trust each other. And it started to kind of erode their friendship. And so she comes back to try and set things right, the one that's left, and the journey starts from there.
Yeah, those are the friends that you want, right? The ones that will help you hide the body. And if they don't know if there's a body, at least they'll lie for you about it, I guess.
Exactly. It reminds me of those shows, where people are loading a body in the trunk or pretending to, and they'll ask, hey, will you help me with this? And they get some bystander to help load it in the trunk. And this bystander kind of is caught in the middle going, those are pretty funny. I don't know if you've seen it.
Those are hilarious. I have seen some of those. Those are always good jokes. Yeah, so you've probably told this story a lot, but something quite shocking started you writing. Would you tell us a little bit about what happened to make you decide you needed to work at home?
Yeah, I had 3 children at the time. I have 5 now. My third was a little girl, was a baby. And I caught my daycare provider drugging them with cough syrup and Tylenol to get the baby especially to sleep, but my 2-year-old as well. And then I had a 5-year-old that I don't think got nearly as much of it because she was old enough that she wasn't as difficult maybe. So she was giving this, and she was an in-home care provider. She went to my church. I thought she loved my kids. She would stay after hours and eat with us and come over for holidays and buy them things. And I just really thought she was kind of part of the family. And so I was super shocked when this happened, but weird things had kind of started cropping up where they'd wake up in the middle of the night, not sick, just happy and well rested. And I had been working all day. I'm exhausted. So I'm thinking, what is going on, And then I found a bottle that got pushed back in the back of the fridge. And I took the lid off to see if it was still good. And I could smell the cough syrup so strong. And then, of course, I panicked and I went to the cupboard, and anything I had up there was gone, even though we never used it. My kids never got any of that stuff. And so then I realized, even in other instances, like one time when my friend came over and we wanted just to go on a bike ride for an hour, and she had 2 little kids, and I kept asking, is it okay if is this going to be too much for you? Oh, no, it's only an hour. Like, I got them. They'll just play. We come home and they're all sacked out in front of the TV. And I'm like, that's just such a weird thing that they wouldn't play with each other, and they'd choose this time to go to sleep. So anyway, all that stuff started. I was like, oh my gosh, how did I miss this? I was so blinded. And of course, the mother's guilt sets in. And so I quit my job to stay home with them. But it was at a time when my husband had launched this total entrepreneurial endeavor where he was going to become a residential developer. So we had 30 homes in various stages of construction, and they were all pre-sold. So he thought he was being conservative. And then the market dropped out, and the appraisals were coming in below our cost. So he was going through a bloodbath trying to save his business, working night and day. I had just quit my job, and yet we have this mortgage and car payments and, children to take care of. So it was a really crazy, dark time. But I knew I had to do something from home to try and help this mess we were in, but I couldn't figure out what. I was thinking the only skill I know I have is that I'm a good typist. So I thought maybe I could open a typing service, but this was before the internet had even really taken off. So I'm thinking, how would I market that? You would have to drive around with flyers and put them up with all these little kids. And so anyway, I was trying to figure out something. And I was reading a good book. It was Jude Devereux's Knight in Shining Armor. My sister had sent it to me. And that's an iconic book. Most people recognize it. And I just loved it. It kind of swept me away from this dark time, while the kids were sleeping, I would read. And as I closed it, I remember thinking, I wonder if I could do this. Writing is something you can do at home. And I had never previously dreamed I would write a book. So the next day, my favorite book in the world was Jane Eyre. And of course, it's a historical set in England with Gothic tones. And so I thought, that's what I'm going to write. And so I started out the next day. But again, we didn't have the internet, so I couldn't just go on there to do research. I had to teach myself the craft of writing. I had to research the time period, which I knew nothing about. So I would wait till he'd get home at night. I'd shove whatever kid was still awake at him because it would be like 8:00 and the library closed at 9. I'd make a mad dash down to Sac State because it was the only library big enough to have the books I needed. And I would just load up as many as I could. And those librarians, I think, would just see me come in and go, oh my gosh, here she comes again, because they're always trying to kick me out, when they close. And so anyway, it wasn't the quick fix we hoped it would be. Certainly didn't save his business or our house. But at night, I would go to sleep thinking, I like my book. I love what I'm doing. I found something wonderful. And that kind of kept me, going through it all.
Yeah, that's a horrifying way to start working from home, but I guess it all worked out. Like, you took off with it. So, but you had never done writing before, correct? You said you were a math and science type of person. So how did you go about teaching yourself the craft of writing?
Well, I never read any how-to books because to me, it schlepped everything that was intuitive over into my conscious brain. And there were too many things to juggle for somebody just starting out. Like, now I can read them and I can know what they're relating to and I can add it to the framework I've already established. So they're helpful to me. But in the beginning, I was overwhelmed by them. But I thought there's myriad examples of good books out there. So I just need to learn from examples. So that's what I did. I just did a lot of reading and trial and error. I just sat my butt down in the chair and I started trying to write. That's how I learned how to write. And, and then I would edit it. And I didn't even know RWA or any writers organization existed to be able to help. I just thought I was by myself. So for the first 5 years, as I was teaching myself the craft and finishing this manuscript and having 2 more kids and learning the time period, in that period, toward the end of it, when I finished my first draft, which was 800 pages long and didn't really fit romance conventions, it wasn't really a romance, it wasn't really a straight historical, it was kind of something in between. And so when I finished it, I then kind of pick your head up and go, okay, well, now what do I do with it? How do I get it published? And so I met with a woman that was in my church who worked for a nonfiction publisher in the area. And just to ask her, pick her mind for ideas. And she goes, well, do you know about Romance Writers of America? And I said, no, I'd never heard of it. And she goes, well, they have a big convention and you should go to it. So I actually hadn't had my 5th child yet. I was pregnant with him. And so I showed up in Texas. I can't remember if it was Dallas or Houston, but I show up in this hotel where there are 2,000 women just crisscrossing all over the library or the lobby. And I remember being so excited. There was such an energy in the room to think I had found everything I needed to be able to get from where I was at to where I wanted to go. They had publishers that were presenting, as a matter of fact, I saw Mira, who I write for now. They did a presentation. They had just started out and they were showing their covers of their upcoming lineup. And I just sat in that audience, like almost drooling, thinking, oh, someday I want my cover to be up there. So it's kind of ironic that that's who I write for.
Well, that's amazing. So you just a lot of reading, a lot of writing and trial and error, and then finding those conferences where you can show off your work. I love that. That's a great story. And now you publish 2 or 3 books a year.
Yeah, I've done 3 a year, almost my entire career. Yeah.
What does that process look like for you to get those books out that fast?
Once you get used to being prolific, of course, it gets easier because anything can be trained, as a habit. At first, I was very stressed because I'd never had deadlines before and I had a large family. So I had to be very careful not to get behind because I'm the type of person that freezes up if I'm under too much pressure rather than like some people need that. Like they'll put it off till the end and then they'll just race and pour it all out. And I am not like that. Like I have to know that I can make it and I measure each. And so I just made small goals. If I get my small goal done every day, I will hit my big goal. And so obviously the kids got in the way sometimes and I have to try and make up for it, but at least I was really trying to stay on pace. I didn't just wait till the end. And this year I only had 1 out, but it's because we were stockpiling for next year. We want to bring out a trilogy, not back to back, but very close. So it's just now become the norm for me. I've been doing it for I think my first book was published in November of 99, and this is 2023. So I've been doing it for quite some time. I do plan to go down to 2 books, hopefully in the near future, just because I have grandkids now, and I would kind of like to travel and do a few different things. I've pushed myself so hard for so long in the writing industry that I'd like to, have a little bit more of a full-rounded life at this point.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, that's really impressive. So when you talk about goals, does that look like word count or like time for you, or how do you set goals to keep yourself on track?
For me, it's pages. Yeah, word count essentially. I try and get 100 pages done per month, which if you do that, then you can write, 4 months, you get a novel. And then I do it 3 times a year and you have 3 novels. So, and 100 pages seems doable. I know authors who write much faster than that, and I don't know how they do it. But my process is that I start out with a solid foundation. I can't have any question in those first 3 chapters. Like I have to feel like they're really solid. And then I kind of go 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward. And so I build slowly, but it's very well edited by the time it gets to the end. So I don't have, like some people have, they just pour out a rough draft and then they go back. To me, that would be very daunting. Like I just have to know I'm building this solid structure from the beginning. And that process has served me well. I've never had any major rewriting, which again would be stressful. Yeah, so I do things to avoid stress.
Yeah, and I think I read that you're a pantser. Is that right? You don't outline. You just kind of go and loop back.
I wish I could outline, but it makes me kind of bored. Like if I already know what's happening in the story, then there's no question in my mind. And for me, and I know that outlining works great for other people, but for me, it causes my work to lose all emotional tension. Mm-hmm. So it just kind of fizzles out for me, and I can't keep that in there. So if I don't know who the bad guy is, then I can't give it away to my readers either. I'm kind of a big mouth frog in that, I don't know if you remember that joke, but anyway, and that I give away, whatever I know. And so unintentionally, of course. Mm-hmm. So I just make sure that I don't know the answers either. And it just, each day I'm excited to get to work and to see what's going to happen. And then my husband, who I read my work to for editing purposes, he'll be like, who did it? Do you know who did it? Or do you know how and I'm like, no, I don't ask me.
Yeah, I guess that's a way to keep it from your readers too, if you don't even know. But you do have a lot of conflict in your stories. Do you think about the main conflict before you get started, or a general idea about that? Or how does that go for you?
Yeah, I build my whole book around the conflict. To me, that's the engine. I don't know how people do it another way, because without that engine, how do you get the forward momentum? So the conflict is really what drives any story, whether it's a movie or a play or, a book. You have to know what the characters are fighting for, what they're facing, and you have to want to root for them. And that's what gets you on that journey. So to me, I love a strong conflict. Like, Game of Thrones is just constant conflict, and Outlander, constant conflict. And those are some of my favorites. And so I'm not one for just kind of an idyllic, slow paced subtle read. I like a little bit more conflict. And so I do tend to write with more conflict, which is not always what you get in a romance. But mine tends to be a little more realistic and gritty in some regards, and a little heavier on the conflict.
Yeah. So do you have any tips for coming up with good conflict in your story?
Oh, tips. How do you, just everything that I read from, I find a lot of my ideas in true crime. If I'm doing suspense, like those, you cannot make that stuff up. I mean, it's crazy, some of the stuff. Like The Secret Sister was inspired by a Dateline episode where I saw these 2 siblings sitting on a park bench talking about this other sibling that they both could remember, but that their mother claims never existed. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there is a book in that. Because can you imagine having these shared memories that lend credibility to your thoughts, and yet not really having clear memories of this person? They're fuzzy. And so you're thinking, am I dreaming this up? But he has the same memories. And so I used that as the premise. I mean, what a conflict that is, right? Like that's just such a compelling conflict, because it creates a question. So I guess I would say, find something that creates a question and that you find super compelling, so that your energy, your excitement for that story, you imbue your work with that excitement.
Yeah. And you write in multiple genres, although they all seem to have a romantic thread. How do you pull that off, like under the same name? Do you feel like sales dictate what you write, or can you kind of do whatever you love?
I've been very lucky in that I have been able to find, even the first book I wrote, I was able to sell. So I was super, super fortunate. That's a hard thing to do. And sometimes it just depends on luck. It's not even skill. It just depends on who's looking at it and if they have room on their list. And so there is such a measure of luck with hard work, with talent mixed into this business. But with the genres, I don't know. It's whatever sort of inspires me or hits me. And I did not want to have to create more than one name. It's hard enough to promote and build one name. I thought it gets confusing for readers to try and remember. And I think that readers are savvy enough to be able to tell by the cover, if there's blood dripping off a knife, that's not going to be just a straight up romance, right? Like they're going to get that. Or if there's two people holding hands walking off into the sunset, you're probably not going to have a serial killer book on your hands, right? So I just felt like those cues were already there. And fortunately, when I came into the business, it was at a time when publishers were agreeing with that. Before that, they're thinking, no, we got to establish these separately. And they kind of pushed the issue of pen names. But I've never had one publisher even bring up pen name to me, which I've been super, super glad, because I have, like you say, I've written historicals, I've written romance, I've written women's fiction, which is what I'm writing now with the trade books. I've written suspense, it's romantic suspense, because there is always romance in it, but some veer a little more toward romantic thriller even than suspense. So yeah, I've been really lucky that I have been able to find a publisher for each of those.
Yeah. And this book, The Seaside Library, also has a lot of tension in it, even though, it's romance. It's interesting. How do you market that? Like with, the cover between romance or suspense, like how do you find that you're hitting your right readers? Yeah.
Biggest challenge. I actually don't know that we always have, to be honest with you. And because you kind of have to pick. If you're doing romantic suspense, like this book here the cover looks really escapish and beach ready, and yet it is got a meteor conflict. So it's tough because you don't want the wrong reader to pick up this book. And the first cover they came up with was even more idyllic than this one. And they loved it. And it was cute. I mean, it had a cute little free library at the beach, so it just looked too low conflict for the story. And I was afraid that the wrong reader would pick it up and be disappointed. So with me, I think it's a constant struggle with covers. I don't know that we've solved that riddle yet. I think that they keep trying. And some end up doing better than others. The bookstore on the beach really, really did well. And that is somewhat of an idyllic cover too. And yet you've got a lot of conflict going in that. You have the three generations weaved together, the daughter, the mother, and the grandmother, and they're facing some pretty difficult things with, one has her husband that's inexplicably gone missing. And then, of course, the grandmother's hiding a terrible secret, and the girl's facing issues with her maturation. And so anyway, it has a lot in it too. So hopefully there's tolerance for it, because they love these appealing, gorgeous covers. My publisher does, and I do too. But the constant back and forth is, how do we adequately represent that this is like you called this a romance. I call it women's fiction. There is a romance going through it, but it has so many different lines that also filter into it that it's a little bit bigger canvas. So it's just really tough to depict, and we don't always get it right.
Yeah, I'm like, well, there's romance, but it's actually really, about a murder, and it's all kinds of things like rolled into one. So yeah. That's really interesting.
It's ultimately about friendship and the different kinds of friendship, and that fits in, I guess, any story. And this, only has her, and there's three tight friends in there. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Covers can be a challenge for sure.
They're definitely tricky, but you did get some input into it.
Yes, I was very fortunate with this, and they have been really good to me. I love the covers that they've given my Silver Springs series. They have been gorgeous. I really liked the bookstore on the beach. I really loved One Perfect Summer. Summer on the Island was gorgeous. So I've been very lucky. I have gotten some beautiful covers. It's just that my books are sort of such an anomaly, at such a crossroads between, women's fiction and romance, that it makes it difficult to represent that accurately.
Yeah. But I mean, you've been very successful. So I have to know, after doing so many books, do you feel like pressure to do better than the last book, or how does that work for you? And how do you handle that
Yeah,
kind
I
of
think
pressure.
that's what keeps the challenge. I think that's what's fun about writing is it's never just like ho hum, but another day at the office, because you're always trying to make your next masterpiece, and it's got to be better than the one you did before. Not only in quality of the writing, but you want it to succeed bigger and better as well. So the whole thing: how do you promote it? How do you get it, done in time? How do you convince your publisher to get behind it? How do you notify enough of your readers? So it's, I think, the challenge of the entire vocation is just keeps you like so excited each day to come to work and keep trying.
Yeah. And you do some very clever promotion. Do you want to tell us about your book boxes?
Yeah. I mean, my daughter, when she came to work for me, she came with some really great ideas. And I wasn't one of those authors who wanted her entire family to work for her. I'm like, no, you go do your thing and do whatever you want to do. I'll do mine. But she was unhappy in her job just out of college. And I needed somebody for social media. I had hired this guy, and all he would put up were cat memes, which had nothing to do with writing, but they got a response. So I guess from cat lovers. So my son even texted me one day. He's like, Mom, what's with all the cat memes? I'm like, it's this new guy I hired to help me. He thinks they work, and I'm trying to listen to him as the expert. And he's like, cut the cat memes, So anyway, I tried telling him that, and he got furious and said, if I didn't appreciate what he did, then he didn't want to work for me. And I'm like, all I did was ask for some different content. It was the weirdest conversation I've ever had. But anyway, so I'm like, okay, if you don't want to work for me anymore. So he went on his way. And then, so Alexa, I was like, oh, I love this daughter dearly. And I don't want to do anything to ruin our relationship, because I can be kind of type A, like I'm a perfectionist. I want things done. I want them done now. I want them done right. And so I thought, oh, I don't want to drive a wedge between us, but just in case it had to end at some point, or, but oh my gosh, I should have. Yeah. I wish I had 10 of her. She's worth her weight in gold. She's just so clever and just has been a great addition to the team. She came up with the book boxes, which at first I was like, are you kidding me? That's going to be so much work. Basically what it is a subscription book box business where you get an autographed copy of the book that we are reading in our Facebook book group. So everybody who's in the book group can get an autographed copy of what we're reading. We read it together. And also the box contains other cool, fun things, usually reader related, sometimes a fun bracelet or charm that we collect and about books or whatever. So she adds a lot of fun things, treats and stuff to them too. So they get this box every month, and we all read the book together, and then they can record it on my website that they finished the read, which puts them in a drawing for $100 on the store. And we have the author visit us. I usually, or used to before COVID more often, I would fly to the author's house. Like we went to the Isle of Jersey to interview Peter James and got to stay in his English manor house, which was phenomenal. I mean, it was incredible. So it kind of gave the readers in the group an up close personal view of like Sandra Brown's house. We went there. We've been to Robin Carr's. We've been to Nancy Thayer's on Nantucket. We've been to Laura Griffin in Austin, all over, Catherine Coulter and Sausalito. And then COVID hit. So we started doing these split screen meetings, but it's great because the author, like we just had Kate Pierce from the UK. She was on in January. We just had our book group meeting. So everybody had read the book, and we got to talk to her and get her thoughts on it and ask questions and do fun giveaways. And we do lots of other stuff with the group too. But the book boxes and the challenge read are kind of the backbone running through it.
I love that. And I love that, snacks are very important when you're reading and writing. So that's perfect. And I love that you include other authors, and, you built this community of author friends. That must be amazing.
Yeah. The community of readers, actually, when we started it, of course, it was for promotion, thinking, okay, like then when you have a book come out, we'll read your book. But the weird thing is sometimes you start out on a path and you think it's for one reason, but what you get back out of it was something else entirely, which is these incredible friendships, like the community. And there's 26,000 in there, but they're so tight and kind. Like, for instance, today I was able to give away 24 Brenda Novak book boxes, which are $55 each. I was able to give away 24 of those to people who had signed up on my box grant program, which is they can't afford a box because they are going through financial hardship or cancer or something terrible, right? They've just lost their husband or struggling with their kids on their own. So there's this segment who is just so generous, and they give, and then other people who can't afford it get it until they can get back on their feet. And so it just shows you the love and the sisterhood that's kind of developed in there. And Lexi and I have just been floored by some of the kindness that we've seen. And it's always fun to see the posts where they're like, this is my best friend and I met her in your book group and we're coming to see you for the big book tour. And because we started a program called Book Buddies. That's another good one where we hook two people together and then they're buddies for like 4 months and they just exchange. It can start for free with just notes, or you can do like $5 level or $10 level and you just send a little tiny package or something just to get to know them. And it's just a fun surprise that's uplifting that comes in the mail. And a lot of those book buddies have become really good friends. And then they hang out together and it makes book group meeting funner. And it makes the tours I do funner because they come out and get pictures together in their Brenda Novak gear. And it's just a lot of fun. Lexa has helped me create a really special group.
Oh my, I love that. And are you back traveling now? Or you're traveling again?
Yeah.
Tours and all of that?
Yeah, I actually have a gigantic book tour coming up where I'm renovating. And this was Alexa's idea too. And the funny thing is at first I'm like, I don't know anybody who renovates Airstreams. Like, I'm not going to be able to do that idea, Alexa. And then my husband hears me say that. And he's like, our neighbor just moved to a bigger piece of property so he can renovate Airstreams. I'm like, no. And then I'm like, well, it still won't work. Because what are the chances that he has the exact type of Airstream that we need, like a small enough one that we could pull it and without too much trouble, because we're new at this, and that, I could afford it, because the bigger, the more expensive. And he's like, well, we can just call him, so we called him up and he's like, yeah, I have this 19-footer and it's already been gutted. So I can start from the ground up and I can give you a good price because of that. And I was like, oh my gosh, well, I guess we were meant to do this. So I'm taking 2 months off work. And when the Seaside Library is released, it'll be the first time I've ever taken even more than 10 days off work, I think. Mm-hmm. And so we are going to pull this traveling bookstore / coffee shop. My husband's going to be the barista. And we know the woman who owns the Dutch Bros in our area. She's going to train him and teach him his own signature drink. And so people will come out to the book signings. They have 32 stops. I'll be driving from Sacramento all the way to Connecticut and then across the top of the U.S. down the West Coast back home. So it'll be a big circle around the United States. And I'll get to meet tons of my readers, tons of people from the book group, and they'll be able to have a coffee drink or hot chocolate or tea if they don't like coffee, with Ted. And we'll do some fun giveaways and take pictures. And all those sales go to the indies that we are visiting. So, but we sell the tour package in advance so that they can get, Alexa designed this darling tote that has the Airstream on it. And so they can get the tote, the autographed book, a matching bookmark, and a ticket to my big finale, which is going to be online at the end so that everybody can attend. And I do all these baskets and we do raffle giveaways and it's fun.
And so your husband's not only your barista, but also one of your first readers. Is that right?
Yeah, I never knew how much it helped to read aloud until he doesn't like to read, but he likes to be read too. So he'll drive and I'll read to him whatever book we're reading, but mostly it's mine because I always have something that needs editing. And I can always see, I can catch my mistakes so much easier because you have to read at a certain pace with a certain amount of feeling. And so you can find these clunky sentences easier and you can trim out repetitions and he can catch things like, a guy would never say lovely or whatever, he gives me this feedback. And so he has gotten really good. When I first started reading to him, he's not a critical thinker. Like he's just so generous and kind, big picture person. But the more that he has done this, I've turned him into a great editor. He's turned himself into it by learning and figuring out what's needed, what kind of feedback I need, what kind of a read, what kind of a listener. So he's great. And I couldn't do it without him. And he's just, as you can tell, you got to be really supportive if you're going to drive a truck pulling an Airstream bookstore 8,000 miles for your wife.
Absolutely.
You got to be really dedicated. And the group loves him. Like all through COVID, we have so many people that were shut in that he was Bingo Ted. So we'd play bingo with them online and they loved that. And he would tell these lame dad jokes, which he came up with on his own. I didn't even know he was going to do that. So at first I was a little embarrassed, but then I really got into the spirit of it and it was super fun.
I love lame dad jokes. I want to hear all of them. So
he had a lot of them. Some of them were pretty funny.
Excellent. So as we wrap up, I just have one final question. Yeah. If you could offer one piece of advice to new and aspiring authors, what would it be?
Well, there is so much advice that you could get out there. I find that overwhelming sometimes, but I just boil it down to one word, and that is believe. If you believe in yourself and what you want to do strongly enough, you'll do whatever it takes to get there. If that means rewriting that manuscript 10 times, then that's what you'll do. If it means working long hours at that computer, whatever you have to do to market it, whatever you have to do to get to earn the extra money, to get to a convention, to be able to meet other authors to network with, and editors, publishers, then you'll do it. So I think it just takes persistence and determination, and that belief is what gives you that.
This episode is brought to you by our amazing sponsor, Laterpress. Laterpress is a platform built to help authors declare independence. It lets authors create digital books and sell them directly to readers through a branded website. Laterpress is free to publish on and doesn't take any commission on direct sales. It's one of the most effective ways readers can directly support authors they love. Get started today at laterpress.com.
All right, let's talk about Brenda here. So subscription boxes. Have you ever heard of anybody else doing a subscription? I can't even say that word today. Subscription box.
Yeah, I have, especially in the indie space. Like I know a lot of indie authors do them with their, books, special edition of their books, bookmarks, candles, treats, those kind of things. So yeah, I mean, it's great, but that's labor intensive. So you really got to have the time.
Yeah.
I could never do that.
It was kind of surprising to hear a trad pub author using that technique, actually.
Yeah.
But I was excited to hear it because it's a really cool idea. I've never gone to the trouble of doing anything like that, but we've kicked it around in my circles forever.
I mean, that's probably why it works, right? Because it's so much work involved in doing it. Nobody wants to do it. So now all of a sudden you're out there by yourself.
You could almost integrate that into a Kickstarter, I would think.
Very easily.
Yeah, I can see that, actually.
Right.
I mean, that's what Brandon Sanderson's are. His 4 novels. You basically are getting a year-long subscription box every 3 months. You're getting a new book, but inside that is like a bookmark. It's a sticker. There's a postcard. There's, whatever your tier was. But that's what his Kickstarter ended up being.
And there are special edition books, like gorgeous printings of those books too, which is which is pretty common to do for subscription boxes, is to do like some kind of cool artwork or edition, binding, whatever. So yeah. It's a really great idea.
Now she's out there doing this by herself. Are there companies out there that'll do this for you? Like, are there boxes that you could just sponsor and get, pay for your book to go into, or that something like that?
I don't know.
I'm gonna research it, because it seems like once you've got the infrastructure in place, you could probably knock these out fairly quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, she's probably doing these in her kitchen with her daughter. That's what it sounds like.
That's
that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But if you can find a company that's kicking out thrillers, like once a month, and you can just reserve a slot, for your particular book, that might be worthwhile.
Sounds like an entrepreneur opportunity.
It does.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. With Brandon Sanderson, I mean, just thinking about what he did, he built that infrastructure over 15 years. He has his own printing press, his own editors, all of that. So had that capability. So I don't know, maybe you can rent space from the printing press from Brandon Sanderson.
I'm gonna shoot him an email when we get off.
Yeah, I was interested to hear, because she really had a lot of praise for writing organizations and conferences. And we've talked a little bit about it. And I'm just wondering if there's anything that you guys have found really helpful or would really recommend for other authors in that space. She was talking about RWA and those type of things.
I love them. I mean, they basically help me recharge my batteries. Like if I'm, because you're locked in that room all by yourself for so long, and it gets repetitive and tiring to a certain extent. And but just being in a room for a couple days with a bunch of other authors all doing the same thing. Yep. Even the conversation to me is better. I don't know if it's just because you're in a room with a lot of readers, writers, but the conversation just seems to be a little bit more elevated than it is if I'm hanging out at the local ballpark or something, talking to my buddies.
You don't have to explain everything. Like people get it. And I have conversations even with my wife, who's been with me through all of this. I'll say something and she doesn't understand what I mean, but I never have to do that with my writer buddies. Like and I can't think of a great example. The box subscription thing might be something, that might come up, but I go to a ton of conferences and I'm a member of 3 or 4 different organizations at this point. What I like about it is, I end up meeting people that I don't think I would have met otherwise, and end up not just striking up like friendships, but sometimes like strategic partnerships. You find out about how this person's marketing in this way, or they have a connection at another conference, or whatever. You get all this stuff that you wouldn't get otherwise, even if you were interacting with people online. But I don't typically share finer points of certain aspects of marketing with people I'm just chatting with online. But if we're face to face in the organic flow of conversation, that stuff may come up, and then suddenly we're learning from each other.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. There's like a special power about being in the same room with other writers. And if you're able to do that, I would highly recommend that, regardless of if it's a local writing community that you can find. There's my soapbox moment, or some type of event. I personally like events that are slightly smaller. Like 100-person event. I get to know a good chunk of people, and I get to kind of be a voice in that, and I'm not really lost in that. All the way down to a 10-person event. I just find those more captivating than going to seminars and kind of feeling like I'm a little bit lost in the crowd.
Yeah. The other thing that I thought that was really important, or not important, interesting when I was talking to Brenda was about the cover that she had on this book. Because this book is whatever you want to call it, romantic suspense thriller. It's kind of heavier on the suspense thriller side than the romance. And the cover is a woman in like a straw hat reading on the beach. And, I'm just like, that's really interesting to me because I know in indie it is so important for your cover to scream your genre. And I wonder like how different is that in trad? Does it make a difference, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Well, I think for somebody like Brenda, like at 75 books, she's basically her own genre right now. Yeah. So like, her covers basically have to have something unique that say this is a Brenda Novak novel. I remember if you get a chance to ever hear Harlan Coben talk, he goes into this. His first couple of books, they kind of centered around sports, but just slightly. Like it was just a kind of an afterthought in the story. But every one of his book covers, like one had a tennis ball on it, another one had a golf club. Like they just kept following this theme that really had nothing to do with thrillers. The traditional world is very weird when it comes to this. When Fourth Monkey came out, like I beat up on my editor to try and get the right cover. Like I hated what they put in front of me, like the first 3 or 4 of them or something. And then, Kristen, my agent at the time, now I have to say that, I guess, she told me, you know what, like if you push back too much on the cover and the book doesn't sell, they're going to say it's because you didn't go with the cover that they wanted. And then, like the book came out in all these other countries and like literally every country had a different cover. Mm-hmm. So, after a certain point, I just learned to kind of default on the, hopefully the expertise of the people actually marketing it. The folks in Japan know what their audience want to see on that particular book. The ones in Korea know, the ones over, in this country know. And, you just kind of have to let that go. Yeah. Personally, when I do an indie cover, though, I love crowdsourcing it. I love, taking 5 or 10 of them. I'm just putting them up on social media and just letting people vote and see which ones resonate. And a lot of times it's not the one that I like, but if one is getting like 80-90% of votes, like that's what I go with. Like you can crowdsource it, because on the downside to the traditional world is the marketing people actually creating those covers, they don't read the book. The editor tells them this is what the book is about. I would like a cover that kind of looks like this, and they kind of run with it. So they're playing that telephone game. And the message can be completely lost from start to finish.
Yeah. That's true. I don't think it's as important in trad. And I think what you said about Brenda is correct. She's so far in her career. She has her readership already, right? So it's any cover. Yeah. She's going to sell well. So, yeah.
What I found interesting was that she writes in different genres, but she doesn't use pen names. So you'd be a little worried about like cross-pollination. And that's probably with the covers as well. She's built her own brand of her. And, she has her super fans, and they're going to buy whatever she writes.
That's what that was one of the things I kind of liked about this, because I've written in different genres and I've always used the same name. I don't use. I've got some pen names for experimental stuff that I never reveal, but I don't typically use a pen name for the stuff I release. And what I liked was that even though it's the same author's name, you still get you still differentiate because of the style of cover. So there's going to be, what I liked about that is there's always going to be those readers who follow that author. Like they're a Brenda Novak fan. And so they're going to read anything she puts out. Doesn't matter what it looked like, what it's about. But she can it's still differentiated enough that you've got these like what look like beach romance reads, and then also these like dark thrillers. I mean, if I were just looking at them side by side, if I didn't happen to pay attention to the author's name, I would never know that it was the same author. So it's making me question a lot of the things that I've advised people regarding covers over the years.
Like, okay, for newer,
I kind of like this.
Right. For newer authors, one of the biggest mistakes they make is the wrong cover. It's like, okay, this is a sweet romance, and it looks more like a dark horror, story. So, it's not matching the reader's expectation. But I think in this case, she has her super fan base where she could pretty much do what she wants.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, awesome. So, JD, who's up next week?
Next week, we've got Anthony McCartan. He's a New Zealand-born novelist, playwright, journalist, television writer, 4-time Academy Award-nominated filmmaker. This guy's been at it for a while. His latest thriller is called Going Zero and releases April 11th.
Nice. If you'd like to be notified as soon as new episodes publish, make sure you go to writersincpodcast.com and sign up now. We'll see you next episode and have a great week of writing.
Thanks for listening to this episode of...
Hi, this is Kevin Tomlinson, and I love coffee. And like JP, I like to support local shops. That's why I love slipping into Perky Beans Coffee, the little local coffee shop right here in the greater Austin area. That's perky. So if you find yourself here in Austin and you've got a hankering for some Java, mosey on down to... Okay, this is way too Texas even for me. Just visit Perky Beans. You'll love it, a latte. And tell them Kevin Tomlinson sent you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Writers, Inc. Access the show notes and leave a comment at writersincpodcast.com.